Stalked. After completing my college education, I'd been living with my parents for a little over a year. I remember feeling grateful for their kindness and patience during that time, as I struggled to find a job and a suitable place to live. It was not an easy process, but I kept myself motivated and optimistic and eventually landed a job that I enjoyed, in a cozy apartment that I could call my own. The job I got was to work from home since people were still scared that Corona could strike again, and they didn't want to risk it. The pay I received was quite reasonable, especially for a recent graduate like me, and it allowed me to purchase things I needed online on platforms like Amazon. Unfortunately, I couldn't control my urge to keep shopping, and my expenses started to increase gradually. Soon after, I found myself scrolling through the app for hours, and even though I didn't need anything, I ended up ordering stuff anyway. Over time, I realized I had developed an unhealthy shopping habit, and it was causing me more harm than good. That day, as I heard the doorbell ring, I quickly made my way to the front door. On opening the door, I came face to face with a middle-aged woman who was delivering my order. I couldn't help but notice how well she looked for her age, so I decided to compliment her to be polite and make her feel good about herself. She blushed and responded with a heartfelt, "You really think so? Thanks. My husband never complimented me like that." Her response made me feel a little uneasy, and I couldn't help but think that she might be getting neglected by her husband or that she was probably divorced. In an attempt to make her feel good, I said, "His loss." She smiled and thanked me again before I closed the door to my apartment. However, as I looked back, I wish I hadn't said that. Ever since that day, every time I placed an order for food or any other item, I noticed this same delivery woman showing up at my doorstep to deliver it. Initially, I didn't find it unusual, and in fact, I appreciated the consistency in her service. However, with each subsequent delivery, I began to notice that she would give me strange compliments that made me feel deeply uncomfortable. She'd comment on my physical appearance and make personal remarks that crossed the line of professionalism. Her behavior left me feeling uneasy and violated. As I continued to order from Amazon, her behavior became increasingly disturbing. I'd catch her staring at me through my windows, even when I had the blinds closed. With each other, the delivery timings only got later and later, and this made me feel uneasy. I couldn't shake off the feeling that she was doing it deliberately. It was as if she was keeping tabs on me, stalking me even. I tried to ignore it at first, but the feeling of frustration and fear only grew stronger. In the end, I made the difficult decision to stop ordering stuff, hoping that it would put an end to her stalking behavior. One night, I was startled awake by someone ringing my doorbell non-stop. I checked the time, and it was past midnight. Without much thought, I got up and went to check who it was, and as I opened the door, I found the delivery woman standing there with red eyes and smelling like alcohol. She grabbed my collar all of a sudden and asked in a very drunk voice why I stopped ordering stuff. I was terrified as to why she was doing this, but before I could say anything, she passed out. Now, I wasn't the kind of guy who would leave a drunk woman alone at my doorstep so predators could take their chances, no matter how much of a creep the woman was. But I didn't want to let her inside my house either, so I called the police and informed them about everything. Soon after, 2 officers arrived and escorted her. A few days went by, and that day I was out shopping at Walmart. When I came home, I was terrified to see that woman sitting on my couch waiting for me. She had a crazed look in her eyes as she looked at me entering. I asked what is she doing inside and how she got in, and she just looked at me weirdly and said, "I'm here for you. I want to make you the happiest man on earth." Trust me, being a man doesn't automatically mean that we would feel flattered or happy if a woman were to stalk us. On the contrary, it could be an incredibly frightening experience, as I was at the moment. I felt a sense of unease and vulnerability, knowing that if things went wrong, she could easily make false accusations against me. As a man, I also felt that I might not be believed if I tried to report what was happening to me. Feeling terrified and overwhelmed and unsure of what to do, I nervously stepped out of my apartment and quickly dialed my mom's phone number. As soon as she answered, I poured out my heart and explained what had happened in my life over the past few days. My mom's voice soon turned fierce with anger as she listened to my story, and she promised to come to my aid immediately. Within just a few minutes, my mom arrived on my doorstep, and before heading in, she suggested that I go to her house where I'd be safe. I don't know what my mom had said to that woman, but after that day, I never saw her again. Before we parted ways, my mom offered me a word of advice that I've never forgotten. She warned me never to compliment another woman unless it was her or my girlfriend.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
Restroom. I worked for Amazon about 2 years ago. It was a night shift job, and to be honest, I enjoyed my work as it wasn't too stressful and I had friendly coworkers. The work environment was pleasant and I felt content with my job. But one day, I experienced something that shook me to my core. My office building was quite old, and there was a restroom on the 4th floor at the end of the hallway that no one ever used. In fact, it seemed like no one ever went to the 4th floor at all. People in the office gossiped a rumor about strange happenings on the 4th floor, and some of them even believed that it was haunted by the ghost of an old employee who had passed away years ago. They said that whoever entered the restroom would be haunted for the rest of their lives. At first, I didn't pay much attention to these rumors, but as time went on, I started to feel uneasy whenever I had to pass by that part of the building. The cleaning staff wouldn't clean the restroom, and no one would ever say anything about it. Even the management didn't seem to care, which I always found weird. It was as if they were intentionally ignoring that part of the building. During our workday, we were given a total of 1 hour for all our breaks. This included time for eating, using the restroom, stretching our legs, and anything else we needed to do. Unfortunately, if we went over the allotted time, we risked getting in trouble with management. That day, when I needed to use the restroom, I found that there were 2 employees already waiting in line. And I knew that if I waited, I would be cutting into my break time, so I decided to go to the 4th floor's restroom since it was the only one unoccupied. This way, I could make the most of my break without sacrificing any of my much-needed downtime. After reaching the floor, I quietly walked to the restroom, and as I slowly pushed the door open, I felt a sudden and intense chill that ran down my spine. There was someone eerie about this place, which made me wonder if the rumor was true. The air felt thick and heavy, and I could barely breathe. The unpleasant smell of stale air made me feel nauseous. I took a deep breath and walked inside, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling that was creeping up on me. As I scanned the area, my eyes landed on the ventilation window. I could feel a faint breeze emanating from it, and wondered if the chill in the air was a result of the cool wind entering from there. Despite my initial assumption, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had taken hold of me. I reluctantly walked towards one of the toilet stalls, but my mind was preoccupied with the unsettling sensation that continued to persist. The restroom was in terrible state. The floors were littered with paper towels and the corners were filled with cobwebs. The toilets looked like they hadn't been cleaned in ages, and the sinks were clogged with hair and soap scum. The door of one of the stalls were broken and it was hanging off its hinges, adding to the overall sense of disrepair. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me, and I wanted to leave as quickly as possible. But I had no choice but to use the restroom and leave. I walked over to one of the stalls and carefully took out the seat cover, making sure not to tear it. As I was about to sit down on the toilet seat, I heard a loud flushing sound coming from the stall next to mine. My heart skipped a beat as I froze in place. wondering who could have entered the restroom without me, noticing since I knew for a fact that nobody had come in after me. I listened intently, but the sound stopped abruptly. I found it quite strange, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. After a few seconds of hesitation, I brushed it off and continued to sit down. However, right after that, I heard an eerie sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. There was a faint whisper coming from the stall next to mine. At first, I couldn't make out what was being said, but as I strained to listen, the whispers grew louder and more urgent. The voice sounded like it was coming from someone in distress, and it was telling me to leave the restroom immediately. My heart began to race as a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I suddenly realized that I was not alone in the bathroom and that someone or something was watching me. As I tried to gather my thoughts, the whispers turned into a menacing growl that seemed to be coming from all around me. I frantically stood up and pulled up my pants without doing anything. My instincts told me to get out of there as fast as possible, so I bolted out of the restroom, my mind racing with all kinds of possibilities and my heart pounding with fear. I hurriedly made my way to the nearest restroom on my floor. Thankfully, it was empty and I quickly locked myself in, trying to calm my trembling hands and racing thoughts. As I relieved myself, I couldn't help but wonder what had transpired in that stall next to mine. The whole experience had been so terrifying that I didn't even care that my precious 1-hour break was wasted and cut short because of that. The entire day, I was terrified, spaced out, and couldn't stop thinking about what happened. Following that incident, I worked at that company for over a year, but the memory of that incident lingered in my mind, making me feel uneasy and paranoid. Despite my curiosity, I never dared to set foot on the 4th floor again, always preferring to use the restrooms on other floors, even if it meant walking a greater distance.
It all started when I moved to this new apartment. Suddenly, I started to receive some wrong delivery orders, but it turned out it was specifically sent for me. My name is Gracie Hart. I started modeling ever since I was 12 years old. Even when I was not very famous, people would often praise me for my beauty and my personality. And after graduating from college, I decided to completely focus on my modeling career. So I moved to this apartment right in downtown LA. Due to my hectic schedule, I had to order everything on delivery from the nearest store. No one was allowed to step inside the gate of apartment building, so the guard used to take my deliveries, and later he would drop it outside my apartment door. But one day, when I was having my periods, I ordered few packs of sanitary pads, and the next day, when I opened the door, I found chocolates in a carry bag lying outside my apartment. I thought the guard may have mistakenly delivered it to the wrong apartment, so I gave it back to him. But after a few days, I got another wrong delivery, and this time I had ordered modeling magazines, but instead the magazines I received were lewd ones. I got furious. I thought the delivery guy had pulled a joke on me, so I called him and started shouting at him, but he swore that he delivered the right ones. Then I thought it must be guard because whenever I passed by him, he kept staring at me with weird glaze. So I went to guard and threw magazines at his face and told him it's not funny. But to my surprise, he told me that he never delivered anything, and the magazines along with deliveries of other apartments are still with him. Day by day, the incidents kept increasing. Whatever I ordered, I would always receive another delivery. I realized it must be the work of some stalker. The agency I was modeling for was near my apartment, and one day after finishing shoots, I found a package outside my dressing room. I opened the package and there was a set of lingerie inside. I freaked out and threw it away. Ever since that day, I started suspecting everyone around me. The neighbors, the guard, the delivery guy, and even my fans. There was a big shoot for a major project in which I had to dye my hair blonde. The shoot gave a boost to my popularity, and one day I received a black hair wig delivered outside my apartment along with a note. It said, "Black suits you best." I panicked and ran inside my apartment. I picked up my phone from the side table to dial 911, but then I remembered there was a clause in my contract regarding the involvement of a law, which says I need my company's consent before getting involved with laws. So I called my manager and told him about my situation and asked him to report it, but he denied, saying that it must be fans sending her gifts and it happens with every other celebrity. My manager told me to calm down and not make any issues because it will harm the company's reputation. So I decided to solve this on my own and cleared my head, took out my diary and a pen. I started to write down all the details, starting from the first incident to the last one, and the names of people I suspected. And I began to live my life like nothing had happened and I'm perfectly fine. But deep down, I was scared, alert, and I started to notice everything that seemed even remotely suspicious. Now, everyone I meet and walk past automatically came in my list of suspects, but I was not losing my mind. In fact, it was clearer to me now. I wrote down every suspicious activity around me. I asked the guards to show me the CCTV footage of the camera that is installed outside the apartment. He said the cameras are not working near my apartment and he will get it fixed by tomorrow. But after that, whenever I asked him, he made some sort of excuse and never let me see the footage. And that was the reason he became the main suspect in my list. I was still ordering foods and groceries through delivery and kept getting the weird packages outside my apartment door. Delivery guy was also one of my suspects, but since he was not allowed inside the gate, I could not think of any other reason except being the only one who delivers my stuff to the guard. It was my day off from work and I slept till noon. I decided to meditate, but after going through all these incidents, I couldn't calm my mind. So I decided to head to the gym that is in the basement of our apartment building. I spent the entire evening working out, and when I went back to the apartment, I found the door was unlocked. I decided to sneakily check who is it and has broken in my apartment. I opened the door without making a sound and tiptoed inside the apartment. Then I grabbed a knife from the fruit basket that was in the hall and looked around. That was when I saw a shadow in my bedroom, so I hid and tried to see the face of the stalker, but I couldn't see his face. I accidentally dropped my phone. He noticed me and rushed towards the gate. I tried to stop him, but he pushed me and managed to escape. I was fed up with this, so I decided to tell the police without even consulting the agency. I had collected all the evidences, my diary which contained the list of people I suspected, and the packages I received. I went straight to the police to file a report. After reporting these incidents, the police started their investigation, and after a few days, they found out who was behind all this. It was my manager. He fed money to the guards so that he can sneakily come and go to my apartment on his will. He confessed that he was one of my fans ever since I started modeling, and that was the reason he took the job of my manager at the agency. But since he never harmed me in any way, he only received a restriction order from the court. After that, my manager was fired from the company. I continued doing my modeling job, but I have decided to put faith in the law for future.
I'd gone the first 22 years of life without having any near-death experiences and hoped to make it through the rest the same way. Unfortunately, a month ago, I was put in such a terrifying position, I was afraid my life was about to end. The gist of the story is that I was the victim of mistaken identity. From what I've been able to gather in the interim, a former female employee was having a tryst with a fellow male employee, and her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend, I'm still not sure, did not approve of the relationship. I want to start by saying that I never worked with or even knew the woman in question. Being a gay man, she wouldn't have been my type if I had. A couple of people that were around when she was told me that she and the man she was sleeping with had been fired a good 6 months prior to my employment. The unlucky coincidence appears to be that he and I shared the same first name and physical description. This had to have been why I was confused with him. A quiet evening in July, I was working, waiting tables, and just before 7:30, I got a single male sat in my section. He didn't look especially mean upon first sight, but he was a rather large man. I'm 5'11", and this man towered over me. Nothing was said at first. I took his drink order, and when I returned with it, he confronted me about the affair. "So you're the loser that's banging my girl?" I asked him to repeat what he'd said, and only got more hostility in return. "You heard me, boy. Ginger told me about your affair last night." His demeanor terrified me. I knew if he wanted, he could easily destroy me. Fighting had never been my forte, and a guy his size would have no trouble laying me out. I did my best to assure him I didn't know his girlfriend, but this only made him angrier. "Listen, you can deny it all you want, but she told me your name and what you look like. Saying you don't know her is just making me more mad." I could see the hate burning in his eyes. He spoke with gritted teeth, and spittle was beginning to come out of the corners of his mouth. My shaking had to have been obvious to him. I was on the verge of running away, but I didn't want to come off as any bigger a coward than I already was. "I'm sorry, sir. I in no way want to make you angry, but I swear that I've never met a girl named Ginger in my entire life. If she worked here, it must have been before I started. I literally only worked here for a few months. Any relationship I had ever had hasn't even included a female, if you get my meaning." It took a moment, but he caught on, and his scowl morphed into a smug grin in seconds. Telling a complete stranger about my preferences wasn't a discussion I wanted to have. However, I was out of ideas and decided on the Hail Mary. "You look like one of those deviants, but it's going to take a lot more to convince me than that." Playing that card must have been a bad idea. Although his voice had lowered slightly, he was balling his hands into fists, and this made my trembling worse. "Why don't you man up and admit you were balling my girl? You got a whooping coming either way. If you admit it, I might be a bit easier on you." It was as if he hadn't heard anything I'd said since he first accused me. The whole time this had been going on, I hadn't been aware of what else was going on around me. Someone in the restaurant, perhaps a patron, had notified my manager what was happening at this table. He came around just as the man had threatened to assault me and interrupted the conversation. "Excuse me, sir. I just overheard your threat toward my employee, and that is something I cannot allow customers to do. I'd like you to leave immediately, or I'll be forced to call the police." "You can call whoever you want. I don't care. I'm just here to tell this little wimp I'm going to give him a stomping for banging my Ginger." The manager's threat didn't seem to make any difference to the man. He was still just as mad before and wasn't showing any signs of leaving. "Sir, if you mean Ginger, the girl who left here more than 6 months ago, I can almost guarantee you that this young man never had any interactions with her. Now, there was another young man with the same name as him that I was forced to fire the same time as Ginger. I inform every employee at the time they are hired that relationships between employees are forbidden, especially when one of those employees are management. A rumor that they were violating this policy reached me, and when asked about it, they both confirmed it. Because of this, they were both terminated that same day. This young man is a new employee, and to my knowledge does not know either of these two. Maybe you should go back to Ginger and ask her to be more specific about the situation. Like I said, I can't have people coming into my restaurant and threatening my employees. You heard the real story, so now you can leave. And please do so now." The entire time my manager spoke, he never raised his voice except for the end. Even then, he kept his composure. I think because of this, the man finally started to believe what I had told him. He stood up at the table, and he must have been at least 6'5". One more shudder of fear shot through me when I realized how massive he was. "Okay, mister. I'm gonna go and have a talking to Ginger again. And if I find out you lied to me, I'm coming back and putting both of you down." The man then turned for the exit. I'd recommend you not do that, sir." My manager hit him with one more parting shot as he left, but the giant ignored it. Once he was gone, I could finally breathe again. After I took a few minutes to calm myself, I returned to work. That evening, and every shift I've worked since, our manager has made sure to walk with me to my car when I get off. He's had a permit to carry a handgun for some time, so this safety measure does make me feel secure. I don't think he's really worried about himself. Since we have our own parking area in the back of the building, not many other people come back there. I'm not even sure many other people know about it. I, nor anyone else, have seen the man since that night, but will probably continue with the escorts for the foreseeable future. I pray each day I leave for work that I won't see that monster ever again. If he does return, I'll update my post. However, I'm pretty sure if he was going to, he would have by now. Let's hope I'm right.